Award-winning author Dayna Ault has been writing, editing, and publishing for 40 years. As a young mother, she wrote articles for parenting, religious, and news magazine while homeschooling her children. After years of freelancing, Dayna wrote her first book, Benjamin's Coin Purse, published by Road and Star Publishers in 2001. In 2010, she took over a small newsletter, turning it into a monthly magazine. The Missouri Autism Report Magazine kept her busy using her journalism and publishing skills for 7 years. During that time, she also served as an alderman in her small town, giving her experience writing municipal materials. With her last child now in college, she's focusing again on writing books. A children's picture book, Who Made This Mess 2022, took first place in the Firebird Children's Picture Book Award in 2023 and received the reader's favorite 5-star rating. Dayna leads a local Lead for Kids group through a local writers guild and does developmental editing and author coaching as well. She also teaches the women's class at her church and serves as a deaconess. She loves to spend time with her husband, Dayton, her 8 children and 17 grands, who are the muse for many of her writing projects. And on today's episode of Auto Interview, it's my pleasure, joy, and excitement to have on the show today, Dayna Holt. How are you doing today, Dayna? Lovely to have you on.
Thank you. I am doing fantastic. I'm so honored to be here today. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm very excited that we're here to sit down across continent. In virtue of internet connectivity, countries apart, many oceans wide, away to have this beautiful conversation around who made this mess that we've talked about quite previously. This is going to really be quite interesting. So thank you very much for coming on. And I'm also, you have such an amazing bio. That was really
Thank you.
impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So
It's been a
then,
fun life.
yeah, quite interesting. So then I must say that I really love the description of who made this mess. Reading through it on Amazon is quite fun to me. And to know that you've been writing for such these good numbers of years too, I think it's a huge plus. Now I'd like to ask you, what led to the making of this book? What inspired you to start this project? How did you get started into writing, first of all? And what inspired you to write this book and also to particularly venture into the children's genre category and also the making of the title as well? I think I've got a trunk load in there actually for a
You do.
starter.
That was a whole lot of questions. So it would take a whole nother Zoom to tell you how I got started writing. But just at the very beginning, I always wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be a veterinarian for like just a few years when I was in elementary school, and then it was writer the rest of the way.
Wow.
I got into journalism early because of my interest and because they had nobody to take over the editor-in-chief role. Everybody was graduating out, and this was when I was in
Wow.
high school. Our teacher was fresh out of college, and so she taught us like we were college students. Later, I took a college course in journalism, and I felt like it was just all the same stuff all over again. So I got a very solid foundation in journalism very early. And I just took that. I worked with the newspaper then for my junior and senior year, and then I went on and went to college, did writing in college. And then when I got married, I wanted to be home with my children when they first started coming. And so I started freelancing for various magazines, especially parenting magazines. And so that's kind of how I got started. And when I was homeschooling my children, I was at about 5 children, I think, 4 or 5 children, when I decided that I could write a children's book as good as the children's books that I was reading to them.
Uh,
And so
wow.
I did. That's what started me into children's literature, was just working with my children, seeing the books, and so that's when I published Benjamin's Coin Purse. Actually, see if I can get it where you can see it.
Yeah.
This one was traditionally published by Rod and Staff Publishers, and it was out for 21 years. They called me 2 weeks after I sent it in. This was back in the days of snail mail. You mail it to them and then you wait,
Wow.
and you may wait a month, you may wait a year. But 2 weeks later, they called me. They said, we want the book. And
Wow.
so it was just really quick. I only had to send it to one publisher. So that was a very special book. And that got me started. I wanted to get back. It was kind of on the show and I published a magazine. I did all this other stuff. And getting back to books was just always sitting there on the shelf waiting until I retired. I can't say that I've officially retired, but my youngest child is in his last year of college. And
Mm,
so I felt released to go back to writing children's books. So here I am.
mm,
Yeah, writing children's books. So, and you asked kind of what inspired this book. It was my children. It was situations with my children. I would walk into okay, 8 children. You have to have that in your mind. I would walk into a room of 8 children and say, "Who made this mess?"
yeah.
And they would always say, I can guess, but they didn't tell me who, And so it was it became a little joke. And then eventually I told them, someday I'm going to put that in a book. And
Mm.
that was the first book that I wrote.
That is so,
So
that I must say is such an amazing and beautiful story you've told us. That is so interesting. And I love the excitement talking about this quite amazingly. And I like the fact that you homeschool your children and from the whole experience, you thought, okay, I can actually write a book like I'm reading to them in some ways, which I think is very important. So that's like a sort of number one sort of inspiration. And also to know that your kids also you enter because kids are very good at that, making mess. I mean, you arrange something, they will come in, pick that, throw it over there, and bring this, take it over there. And I thought, oh no, that's not supposed to be there. They're so good at messing place up and they do it so
yep.
innocently and so efficiently, you know.
Right, right. And I think sometimes they really don't know who made the
Yeah.
mess. They were busy reading their book and the mess appeared. We don't know, Mom. We have no idea, but we can guess.
That is so fun. That is such an amazing answer you've given. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And what I love is how the story gently reflects on how adults respond to stress and messes. Why was that important for you to include? And also, the character of Tis the dog is quite hilarious and extremely charming to me. Is she based on a real family pet?
Yes, so I'll talk about the dog first. And yes, the dog is based on a Sheltie that we had for the children when the first batch of kids was younger. And this was the family pet. It was a male. We named him Fritzy, and he was a messmaker extraordinaire and a wonderful escape artist. We could not keep him in the fence. He was getting out all the time. And so I feel like all we did was chase that dog. So yeah, that was the dog in the story, more or less. Now Fritzy was an outside dog, and of course, obviously, our dog in the story is an inside dog. But we do have an inside dog now, an American Eskimo, and she's beautiful. And the younger kids now that are grown, but they've all been in love with her. So
Oh,
seems we've
wow.
always had a pet. About the mess theme, that of course, obviously, because of what started the whole thing, that was just kind of set. That was what I was writing about. So obviously, this book is going to have something to do with messes, and then I just sat down to write it. It came to me in rhyme. And so, the mom being distressed, and this dog is adding to my stress, and all of this stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, everything had to rhyme with mess. And it just kind of fell into place that way.
Mm,
But I will say that on the flip side of that, once it was written and I
yeah.
began to speak to people about the book, I
Mm,
realized what a wonderful opportunity it is to share with people. What do you do when you're stressed? Who do you
mm,
talk to? And a
yeah.
lot of times the kids give me, what they've heard their teachers say about calming yourself and deep breathing and all this kind of thing. And I'm like, talk to your parents, talk to an adult that you
Yeah.
can trust.
Absolutely.
And then of course we talk to God. And
Mm,
as Christian, and you read that I'm a teacher in my church.
yeah.
I'm a deaconess. My husband's a
Yeah.
deacon. I really believe firmly that children need to have that option, that ability, that knowledge of how to reach God. And I often share with them my favorite verse, Philippians 4, 6, and 7. And it says, be anxious for nothing, but
Anxious.
in everything with prayer and supplication, make your requests. Oh, wait, and thanksgiving. Make
Yeah.
your requests known to the Lord, and the peace of God that passes all understanding will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And that isn't that what we all are looking for when we're stressed and we're distressed? We're looking for peace because we feel
Absolutely.
all anxious and jumbled up, especially a child
Yeah.
doesn't know what to do with these adult issues they may be
Yeah.
dealing with. And
Yeah.
so, and then of course the other verse is 1 Peter 5:7, cast all your cares upon me, for
Mm,
I care for you. And I think those two work so well together to help
absolutely.
us find that peace that
Mm,
we may be looking for. And so it's become a really wonderful thing that it's in there. And as I often say, I feel like when we commit something to the Lord, He is going to bless it in ways we don't imagine. So the message was
wow.
there, even though I didn't realize it.
I love the fact that you had to include and incorporate all of these biblical verses. It's so important, very interesting, very true, and I love them wholeheartedly. So thank you very much for adding that and quoting it. Quite great. And many
You're
children's
welcome.
book focus only on the child's experience in so many ways, but yours also centers the parent's emotional journey. How do you cope that dual perspective helps family? How do you hope that combination of perspective helps families?
So, communication is hard.
Yeah, yeah,
Parents are just learning. I always say, be patient with your parents. This is the first time
mm,
they've been a parent.
yeah, that's
Parents
true.
are learning and children, this is the first time they've been a child. Children are learning. And it's just really, really, sometimes it's hard. We have these clashes when,
Mm,
if we would just stop and hear each other instead
mm,
of saying, well, I told you so, I'm the one in charge and you have to do it.
mm,
Um, to communicate effectively, we have to listen to each other. I actually put together a listening journal that people can get off my website that goes with the book. And it's free download that they could do with their children. It's like a little devotional, and all the way through, you learn to listen. I
yeah,
do a game with the children. It's would you rather?
mm,
Everybody loves that game. The kids all cheer when I say would you rather. And we talk about would you rather have two ears or two eyes? Stand if you like the first one, stay sitting if you like the second one. But I tell them you have to do the whole thing before you answer. And then I
yeah,
come back around to that and I say, okay, so when we're listening to our parents, and hopefully when they listen to us, we're listening to the whole matter. And, the Bible actually says that we are foolish when we answer
mm,
a matter before we hear the whole thing. We are supposed to
mm,
listen to the whole matter before we answer it.
mm,
And so I think, again, looking back at the Word of God, that's Proverbs 18, looking back at the Word of God for those answers. James 1:19 says to be quick to listen, slow
mm,
to speak, and slow to answer. And if we
mm,
would just get that in order, I
absolutely.
I just feel like that parents are seeking answers.
Mm,
And I don't have all the answers, but I've made a whole lot of mistakes. And we learn so much
mm,
more from our mistakes than we do from our successes. And if
yeah,
I can help one person do better, because they could learn from something that I learned, maybe I learned it too late for me, but maybe I learned it in time for them. And so
that's
again, it's a message behind the mess that I try to get across to people.
I love that. That's such a beautiful answer to that question. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And as a mother of 8 and grandmother of 15, you've seen a lot of parenting moments. How has your own journey as a mother and grandmother shaped the values behind your storytelling? Also, I'm just curious to add this. How do your kids, your own children and grandchildren, how do they feel getting to know that they have a mother, a grandmother who is an author who writes books?
Well, okay, so as far as the values, my values are based on my faith in God. And I think that when you take God out of your life or out of the situation,
Yes,
he is the one that sets the moral values.
yeah,
Even, the laws of the country are
yeah,
usually at least begun based on the word of God. Here are the values that we follow. You don't steal, you don't kill, you don't
yeah,
hurt other people. There's those laws that God set up.
yeah.
And so he is the ultimate author of our morals. And when
Mm,
he is taken out, we lose those morals.
mm,
And so my faith in God is what my value system is built around. And that's not for everybody. Well, it is
yeah,
for everybody, but not everybody accepts that as being for
yeah.
them. They're scattered around in Wisconsin and Kansas City and Colorado, and they're
Wow.
kind of all over the place. And I'm in Missouri, and some of them I hardly ever see. And but several of my grandchildren do know that their grandmother is an author, and some of them have really taken advantage of that. Oh, Grandma, can you edit this for me? And we trying to write a little book, and I have more fun with that. I love it. I love it. And some of them are just genius when it comes to putting words together. You play a word
Wow.
game with them, and it's like, wow, you are the next writer of the family. But yeah.
Wow.
And then there's some of them that probably don't even know. They've all gotten a copy of my book,
Wow.
but because I some of them don't ever mention it, so I don't know. Then when I see them, it's all about let's celebrate the year's worth of birthdays and let's go down and
Mm.
splash in the lake and that kind of stuff. We're not thinking about grandma being an author. So I don't know if that answers the question, but there you
Yeah,
go.
that answers it quite amazingly. That is so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for including that. And picture books are short but powerful. How did you go about narrowing the story down to just a few pages while still keeping the message clear? I would love your take on that.
So I do a lot of editing. I work with other authors and I work with a lot of children's authors. And that is a common theme. You need to reduce your words, and
Yes.
it takes a good writer to be able to eliminate
Mm,
words. In my
yeah.
book, I had to eliminate a person. I had too many children. And the editor, I had look at it. The first thing she said was, "You need to eliminate a child." And I'm like, no, you
Wow.
know, we're in love with our words. We're in love with
Yeah.
our characters, but I
Yeah.
did it and I think that it did make it stronger, even though I'm just glad I didn't try to put all 8 of them in there because that would have been really hard. But this my story was written in rhyme. So it was always a short rhyme. It was never real long. In fact, I had more of the issue of how do I make it long enough for Amazon
Mm,
to publish it because 28 pages is the least number of pages that they will print, and it was
yeah.
short. But that being said, I do think that it's a common problem. And, when we write that story, then we come back around and we look at it. We don't, I mean, just get it on paper and then come back around and look at it and say, what can I eliminate? How can I say this and conserve my words? How can I say this in a way that's easier for children to understand? And we ask ourselves those questions, and that helps us to bring that book into something that it is going to be appropriate for that age group.
Mm,
So, anyhow, I think for me with Who Made This Mess, um, the thing that I had the biggest problem with was making sure that my rhyme cadence was correct because rhyme is not easy. And most people will say, don't write your book in rhyme, but this one came out of me in rhyme.
wow.
But I had some close rhymes that were not true rhymes, and I had to figure out how to fix that. One of them was caught by my second editor, not the first editor, but the second editor,
Mm,
um, after the illustrations were done.
done. Yeah.
And I was in tears. I'm like, I'm gonna have to this problem.
Wow.
But as it turned out, I prayed about it.
Wow.
I pray about everything. And as it turned out, we figured out a solution. We flipped one of the pages, and so that Tess was at the end and it rhymed with mess, and I was able to fix that problem, remove that near rhyme and make it a true rhyme, which has been
Mm,
really important because that's another thing that I talk to people about is, children is rhyming words. Let's
mm,
find words that rhyme with this word and this word, and it's a little hard to teach it if you didn't follow it in your book. So,
yeah. I mean, I enjoying your answers to this question so far. Quite interesting and quite awesome. And if you have a copy of the book, I'd like you to show it to the camera, just so we can see.
let's
And you
see.
showed ones
It's like,
initially. Yeah. Aside from
okay.
Who Made This Mess, there's another one you showed before. Yeah, that one.
Benjamin's coin purse. There we
Benjamin's
go.
Coin Purse. Yeah, very
Yes.
interesting. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
And you included a letter to parent at the end of this book, which offers practical insight about calm parenting. Because, like you mentioned, it's their first time parenting. And I also find that other statement to be quite funny is their first time being a kid, too.
Yeah.
You know, why did you choose to add that? And what do you hope parents take away from this letter to parent at the end?
Do you remember when I said that I needed to find a way to use more pages?
Yeah.
That was the first thing.
Oh.
But but I put a lot of prayer into this book, and
Mm,
that was what came to me. And I don't
wow.
know anybody else that has done that. Now I'm sure somebody has, but a letter to the parents just I kind of get these like downloads, and then I just have to get them on paper, and it just downloaded, and I got it on paper.
Wow.
And so I think that it is my heart to help parents. There are 10 million parenting books that sell every year.
Wow.
It's a huge, huge market. It's a huge need. Parents not only need to know how to do their job and how to cook a good meal, and
Mm,
but they need to know how to be parents, and they're looking everywhere for that information. So if I can help them a little bit at the back of my book, then I feel like those are pages well used. Um, and as I said, we learn more from our mistakes, and I've made a lot of mistakes. So I have a lot of advice to give because of all the mistakes I've made.
mm,
And so, I felt like
wow.
adding that in would be really, really helpful. When I mentioned it to the lady that was working with me on the book, I had at that point I was working with April Cox, who
Mm,
has self-publishing made simple. She is brilliant. She
wow.
is brilliant. And when I was working with her, I wrote the letter and I gave it to her and I said, "What do you think?" And she said, "Oh, it's the message behind the mess." And so that kind of
Wow.
stuck. Yeah, kind of stuck.
Wow.
So I find myself asking, if I could do it over again, what would I do differently? And
Mm,
that's what I tell the parents. So,
Wow, that's a beautiful one, really. Thank you. Thank you for mentioning. Quite interesting and quite fun. And Dana, you have a beautiful background in journalism and editing. How does that influence the way you approach writing for children, if in any way?
okay, so I actually wrote down my answer to this. So I told you about Rod and Staff that this book, they called me 2 weeks after they
Yeah,
got
after
it. And
submission.
so
Yeah,
yeah, and it was published traditionally.
yeah.
And that was easy. It was just editing for them. And at the time I thought it was hard, but now I look back and I'm like, oh, that was a whiz. I edited it. They did everything else, and I just waited for the checks to show up. And
Wow.
and checks showed up for 21 years.
Oh,
It was also, they translated it into Spanish for their Spanish ministry.
mm,
And so that book is still going. Apparently, it's still selling really well. The English version kind of slowed down, so they gave me the rights back so that I could rewrite the book
wow,
however I want to. They said you can do whatever you want to with it. And so that's coming. That's coming.
wow.
But yeah, so the question was challenges. So when I worked on Who Made This Mess, I wanted to figure out if I could do this on my own, if I could self-publish. And I took April Cox's class and learned all those things that you've got to know, the ISBN number
Yeah.
and how to get it ready to get into libraries,
Mm,
and how to write a compelling book for children, and what age
mm,
group is your book for, and
yeah.
she's got editors and she's got designers and she's got illustrators. She helped me find my illustrator.
Mm,
And so I feel like I kind of worked with she so I would tell everybody watch her YouTube channel. She
oh,
just has so much good stuff on there
wow.
for children's writers especially.
Oh, that's
And like
good.
I said, I did hire a designer to handle the layout, and they put it on Amazon for me. They
Oh,
did the Ingram Sparks thing. Um, I have other authors that I work with that I coach and edit for, and they've done it themselves. And my hat is off to them. I'm like, here, take my next book and do that for me. Now it's my turn to hire you. But I will say that
very
the
good.
biggest challenge that people run into, if I'm not running over here,
Mm.
children's books are expensive. The
Yeah, yeah,
illustrations,
they
the
are
color print, all of that
absolutely
makes a children's book so expensive
expensive.
to
Yeah.
publish. And I would say, look at all of your options for publishing because there are many.
Mm,
Do you want to go hybrid? Do you want to go with a subsidy? Do you want to do it yourself? Do you want to wait around and try to get a traditional publisher to take
publishing.
it? That
Yeah.
market has changed tremendously since I was doing it. But realize that you may not recoup your money for a
Mm,
children's book. That's just,
yeah.
that's the way it is. You may not. You
Mm,
might, if you're real popular, if you really push it and you really market and you do all the
mm,
things,
yeah.
you may. But
Yeah.
a children's book is expensive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love your take on that. That is so true. Very true. The illustration alone, it takes quite a lot of time. The diagram, the cover design, all of that, because it takes a different kind of effort that goes into it. Even though it looks to be quite small, there's a lot that goes into it. The money, the cost, the time, etc. Quite interesting that you mentioned that. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
Yeah, and apart from Who Made This Mess, do you have any other works you're currently working on? And also, just in case we have some viewers watching this, where can they pick up the books from?
Okay, yes. Okay, so of course I have Benjamin's Coin Purse, and I keep missing where to put this. This one you can just get from me now. It's no longer available through Rod and Staff. Who Made This Mess is on Amazon. I have to figure out where to hold it. It's on Amazon. And you can either look me up, Dayna Ault, Dana with a Y, Alt with a U, or you could just look up Who Made This Mess. There's about four other books, three
Oh,
other books, I think, with that name, but
wow.
mine's usually real close to the top. Yay. So, and then I'm also working on, I have two other children's books that are mostly written, but they're not illustrated. I do need to do finishing touches, run them through an editor because even editors need editors. Um, we don't edit our own stuff. We ask somebody
Yeah,
else to look at it because you get so close to that work that you can't fix it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and then I've got a YA that I'm working on. I've been working on it for 5 years. It is
Mhm,
a Black history. It's about a gentleman that grew up in the Deep South
mhm,
during the Jim Crow era, and he experienced all that racism. And then he ended up marching with Martin Luther King Jr. when he was, or Dr. Martin Luther King, as we know him, when he was a young man. And his
mhm.
story is phenomenal. And what I'm doing right now, I have the narrative in his voice. And now I'm putting in the historical information. And I have these wonderful history professors that go to my church. And
Wow,
I kind of
wow,
ask them, would you look at this and make sure everything is good? And they have been
wow,
wonderful. They've acted as sensitivity readers
wow,
as well as my history checkpoint. And they've done a wonderful job. So once I get that done, I'm really excited. That's going to be a whole new world once that one releases.
mhm.
So anyhow, and then of course I'm editing books, and I'm an editor and a coach. I do developmental editing. So I've always got an author or two that I'm working with, and trying to help them get their books ready to go.
Wow, that's a great one, really. That is so fun and so interesting. Thank you very much for
Yeah.
sharing. And I left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Dayna Ault book directly on Amazon, Barnes& and Nobles, on our website, and also on other platforms. I also left a link to Dana's social media pages for possible followings. So thank you so much, Dana, for sitting down with me this evening, because it's evening here in England. I know it's afternoon in your world, yeah?
Yeah.
That to have this beautiful conversation, it's really impressive. And thank you very much for coming on.
Well, Peter, thank you again. This has just been an honor to get to sit here and talk about my book, which I love to do, as you can tell. And thank you for sharing all my information. And I hope we can stay in touch.
Yeah.
And I just thank you so much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure as well.